Let's talk to Dr. Benny Peiser and find out what he makes of it all. Dr. Benny, a very good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning.
Thanks very much for joining us. Donald Trump's got this right, hasn't he?
Well, it was quite an amazing speech, and I think it will resonate for years to come, because Davos over the last 10, 15 years has become the home of the doomsayers and the doommongers. And, of course, the wealthy elite flying in with their private airplanes to Davos and then preaching to the world that flying is bad.
Yeah.
It doesn't really come across very well. So I think Trump's speech will, obviously, it's a speech not just to the people in attending the World Economic Forum, but mainly his base in the U.S. But what he's essentially saying is, and his speech started with pointing out that the U.S. is now an energy superpower, producing more oil and gas than any other country in the world, and that they are now basically reach some kind of energy security that allows the U.S. to thrive and to boom, and the economy is booming, and he said each American family is saving $2,500 because energy is cheap.
Exactly right. And also, the fact that we keep being told by the likes of Greta Thunberg and her kind of acolytes and the various kind of apostles that she has, because she has been created as this kind of almost godlike figure who walks among us, you know, but she's got some kind of special skill to be able to define the carbon in the air and the fact that she can see what we can't see. I mean, it's barely believable. But it's believable only for the reasons that you state, that the global elites love the idea of having this kind of poster girl so that they can use her to kind of influence people's emotions to do things.
Yeah, big mistake, huge mistake, because as long as climate change was the scientific issue, they could say, look, listen to the scientists, and the scientists, they are moderate and they give a balanced view, but Greta has become a cult figure and a prophet of doom, and it looks more and more like an apocalyptic mass movement rather than a rational scientific issue that needs to be addressed in a rational, calm, and pragmatic way.
Yes, because we've been seeing in this country, Dr. Benny, and you'll know this, I'm sure, Extinction Rebellion doing their mass protests, gluing themselves to trains, getting dragged off trains by people who had to get to work and who couldn't be bothered with these ridiculous protests that they put together, weeks on end, blocking bridges. These people are anarchists. They have nothing to do with really changing the climate. They're all about changing the way that our political system operates.
Yeah, in a way, it is a mass movement that jumped on this bandwagon. They come and go, these movements. Yeah. The topics come and go. I mean, President Trump pointed out that the same kind of hysteria we observing now happened in the 60s with people saying, too many people, they're destroying the planet in the 60s. Then the whole idea that hundreds of millions will starve to death in the 70s. Then, the ice age will come. That was the other scare. And then, we're running out of oil and gas.
Right.
So these scares come and go. And I think that we've seen the peak of the climate hysteria, because now it's becoming really a problem for most governments.
Yeah.
All the easy things, all the cheap and easy bits of decarbonization have been done. Now it's becoming really difficult, very expensive, and the public will not sit still if their energy bills continue to rise.
Well, exactly right. I mean, and also in this country of ours, we do far more than any other country on Earth in terms of declaring ourselves to be carbon neutral by 2050 on the basis that we charge an airline tax to airlines unknown to any other country in the world. When you fly, you have to pay. We pay green taxes on our energy already. The idea that we're not doing anything, as old Thunderbird keeps telling us, is nonsense.
Yeah, indeed. And, one of the tricks of the game is, of course, to outsource a lot of production to China and other countries and say, look, we're not producing this CO2, we're just importing this stuff from the, so it's a bit of a con to say, we are, the greenest country in the world, but importing all the stuff that is being cheaply produced in countries with much lower standards.
Sure.
However,
no, but we are being taxed as a result of these green policies more than we should be.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a threshold, there's a limit to how much people are willing to pay, because everyone, when asked, do you want to save the planet? Do you want to save the climate? Will say, yes, of course. But there is a limit to what people can afford and are able to afford, in particular in a situation where most of the world doesn't actually care. Most of the world is doing business as usual. So whatever we are doing here in the UK is swamped completely by what's going on in Asia, in China, in India. So unless there is a level playing field, nothing we do will have any effect on the CO2.
Well, I presume there are those as well, I don't know if you're one of them, Dr. Benny, who would say, actually, there isn't much that we can do about any of it. I mean, it may well be that there is climate change going on, but then climate does change. I mean, that's the point of climate. It doesn't stay the same. But the idea that the Earth may or may not be heating up is still in question. The science is by no means absolute on anything, and the predictions are certainly not absolute, because the predictions have been so wrong in the past.
Yes, well, that is part of the scientific problem, that the models and the people who create the models and make the predictions have run too hot.
Yeah.
In other words, the predictions of global warming are much worse than the actual warming trend, which is much lower, which is so gradual that people hardly notice it. Obviously, we live in a period of global warming, and have been for the last 50, 70 years.
Right.
So that is a fact. But by and large, this has been good for the global population, for agriculture, for forests. But there comes a point where it might become a problem. And the most rational and pragmatic way of dealing with climate change or global warming in the absence of international decarbonization is to make our cities and towns more resilient.
Yeah.
So then, because we've always had flooding, so there will be flooding in the future, no matter how much CO2 we emit. So the best thing dealing with flooding is to prepare towns and cities to make them more flood-proof, to make homes more insulated for against heat or against cold. There are much better ways of dealing with extreme weather than trying to cut CO2.
Yes, exactly right. And also, there's an awful lot more flooding going on in many parts of this country because of the way that the houses have been built and the way that the water courses have been set to run. And therefore, without taking due care when they were doing all of that preparation for building, of course the places are going to flood. I mean, I lived in a place in Wiltshire which flooded as a result of the farmer who had a field behind my house ploughing the field so that the rain just ran off it instead of leaving it fallow when there was quite, long grass in there.
Exactly, and it makes more sense to spend money on that particular problem, which can be sorted because we know why flooding happens, and you can, build housing away from the floodplains and make sure that the rivers are dredged and so on.